Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today we're taking a look at a relatively new offering from CRKT. This is the CRKT Pilar 3. Now, before I go any further in this review, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at some overall specs on this knife right here. We have an overall length of 7.25 inches, a blade length coming in at 3 inches with a cutting edge right around 2.85 inches, a blade width of 1 inch with a blade thickness of 0.15 inches. We have a blade steel of D2 with a blade style being a spear point with a flat grind, a handle length coming in at 4.25 inches with a handle thickness at 0.42 inches. We have a handle width coming in right around 1 inch with handle material of G10 on the front side and stainless steel on the lock side with a tip-up right-hand only carry, weight of 3.6 ounces, designed by one of the best there is, Jesper Voxnäs, and a price coming in at $51.95. Now this knife right here will be linked in the description below for purchase, but there's a few things I want to specify about that link. Obviously, it's an Amazon link. It's going to take you to a link to, I believe, the CRKT shop. Now, the way they have this listed, this exact model with D2 and the gold backspacer, bronze backspacer, brass backspacer will be available to purchase. That version on the Amazon link that was $82.99, don't buy that. Absolutely do not buy that. That's kind of a ripoff. There's a couple other options though. There's an 8CR13 MOV option, which is again the exact same knife, just with 8CR. That's $45. I mean, that's rather reasonable. 8CR isn't the best steel in the world, but my original Pilar is 8CR. I don't mind it one bit, so that's a much better option. There's also options for like the large Pilar and whatnot, but I just wanted to point that out. If you go put this exact knife in your basket, you're going to see that it's $82.99. Unfortunately, I don't have any control over the prices that CRKT sets on their knives on Amazon. I wish I did, because I think it's pretty crazy to ask that much for it, but it just is what it is. It's the best thing I can send to you. So if you want this exact model with D2, I would highly recommend checking out the other major online retailers that would carry this knife, but it is linked below to check out if you'd like to pick one up. Now let's talk about size comparisons. Not blade shape just yet, not blade. We're gonna get into size comparisons first. Getting ahead of myself here. Too much coffee this morning. Okay, let's take a look at the ProTech Malibu as well as the Benchmade Bug Out. So as you guys can see, this Pilar, I think this is the Pilar that I think a lot of people have always wanted. I know there's a lot of small knife fans out there, and I am becoming one of them, in all honesty. But there's something about the ergos of a Jesper Voxnäs knife that just go, in my opinion, a little better. They're good on small knives, but when you're already a large knife guy, you go down to that medium size with those Jesper Voxnäs ergos, and they just get to be great. That's what you have here in this Pilar 3, and as you can see, it sizes up rather well with the Malibu and Bug Out. And now next up, we have a couple other ones that I think everyone will enjoy seeing. A little more on the, one's on the budgety side. The Kaiser Gemini, which is a very good comparison, almost the identical length, and the SOG Terminus XR LTE. So again, as you can see, this is not a small knife. It's not a large knife by any means, but definitely a good medium-sized knife. And lastly, one more size comparison that I think a lot of people will be interested to see if you haven't seen it already. That is the OG, the CRKT Pilar. And it is obviously much smaller. So there's a really good idea of just how much they've stretched this knife out. And it really does kind of look like they just grabbed the tip right here and grabbed this corner and just went whoop, pulled it right out. Yeah, it went just like this. Whoop. That's how it sounded too when they did it. But it's basically a larger Pilar, and that's a really nice thing because I'm a huge fan of this Pilar. There's not many times I buy a knife with 8CR13 MOV steel and drop the money for a custom scale on it. That's how much I like this knife. So really great knife, and the Pilar 3 so far is living up to the hype. So I hope I pronounced Pilar right for you guys. I do think it sounds like a P. The I sounds like an E. I've heard Jesper say it in a video, so that's why I'm calling it the Pilar. You guys were really good about pointing out to me that the paradigm is indeed the paradigm. So good catch on that. I don't really have an excuse other than I'm not always the best at pronunciating words. So there we go. Now back to this knife. The blade. Let's talk about it. What exactly is it? Do you guys think this is a spear point or a drop point? I mean, I'm kind of leaning more towards a drop point. I don't know the exact difference in definition between drop point and spear point, but I just have a problem seeing this as a spear point. I always thought a spear point was more of a uniform, spear looking thing. So kind of up for debate in my eyes, but regardless, whether this is a spear point or a drop point, it really is a great blade shape. And it also has a pretty nice edge. Now, we're only talking 26 thousandths behind the edge, which is, I mean, it's an average edge. But CRKT, they do one thing really good, and that is putting a nice sharp edge on their knives. There's a lot of other things I could knock CRKT for some quality issues, for some, they use some cheaper materials sometimes, but they do put a really good edge on their blades, at least from my experience. When I first got into knife collecting, I had a lot of CRKTs because, I was obviously just getting into the hobby, and their designs just really stuck out to me at an affordable price. And I had a lot of them, and I really did like all of them. But as I got deeper into the hobby, I kind of got away from some of them. I'm really happy to see this from them, though. There is a lot of good things going on here. Again, as I said, the edge is really good. You also have that really nice deployment hole that is just, in my opinion, outside of, probably, of course, the Spidey hole, this oval shape here is probably my most enjoyable cutout to put on a blade. It's really easy for me to get my finger in. They did a fantastic job of chamfering it just enough so it feels really comfy, doesn't shave your nail when you flick it out. Really good job there. And of course, it has the choil on the blade, which we'll talk a little more when we get to ergos, but just a perfect size choil. One thing this blade really does need is that Vox jimping. If it's a Vox design, I don't know if they just passed on the jimping because of the extra time and labor it would take to put it in. I don't know, but I really wish it had that because your thumb just wants it right there, right middle way up the blade where it usually is. It would be fantastic there. Really wish it had that, but what it does have that I really like is a tip that is made to work. Very nice width of a tip, not too dainty, not too thick. Going to give you a pretty good cutting tip, and also have a lot of strength reinforced up there to really let you work with it. So really nice tip to pair with a really nice blade, and overall just a very nice blade that I actually like a lot, especially compared to the OG Pilar, which is obviously a lot smaller. When you're comparing the edges, you have that extra, I would say probably at least ½ inch, maybe more, you have to work with. Is really appreciated on this knife because, like I said, it takes a lot of the good qualities from the Pilar and just gives you a little more to work with. Now, going into the handle and ergos of this guy, they're Vox. Do I really need to say a whole lot more? Vox is basically synonymous with fantastic ergos. This knife really isn't much of a difference. There's not a whole lot of bad qualities on the ergos of this guy. It is literally an elongated Pilar, so it carries a lot of those good qualities, but it's also, in my opinion, not quite as good as the original Pilar when it comes to ergos, but still really comfy. I mean, you're definitely going to put this in your hand and be like, okay, yeah, yep, those are definitely good. One thing that really surprised me when I opened this guy, took it out of the box, was how slim it was. I was just expecting it to be, I think, a little wider, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of threw me off for a second. When I put it in my hand, down here, the bottom area feels really good. Me, personally, I have kind of longer fingers, so there's a little extra open space right here. I wish this wouldn't have curved in so much. For me, it would feel better if it was out a little more, but at the end of the day, it's still good. I mean, I still have no problem carrying this. It's one of my more comfortable handles on a knife. But again, that doesn't, it just kind of is what it is. But it is good. It's good. Definitely has that Vox, the Vox feel and those Vox characteristics that do make it really good. One thing I really don't like, and it's one of the reasons I kind of just stopped with CRKT, is because these stupid backspacer screws they have here. These are free spinning. They're in so one of the screws is longer than the other one, or they're free spinning. So you got to put a screwdriver or a Torx head here, and then a Torx head here, and then you have to, kind of get the whole juggling, balancing act where you steady it somewhere, and then screw this way and this way. So you got to work on both ends, and it's a real pain in the butt. And sometimes if they put too much thread locker, or if they tighten them too tight, who knows? But then you can strip a screw, and then you have all sorts of issues. I actually had to send my original Pilar, I had to send that into CRKT because they put way too much glue on one of these screws, and it just really pissed me off. So that was one of the reasons I said I'm never going to buy a CRKT again. Then they came out with this Jesper design, and I was like, okay, I take that back. But I just really wish they would not do that. I wish they would just go to regular screws that screw in like a lot of the regular knives and just make everyone's life a lot easier. I would really appreciate that if you could do that, CRKT. I'd probably buy and review more of your knives, but this is just, it's a lot to work with. But I made an exception for this one. Kind of glad I did, but I really wish they go away from that. I think it would make everyone a lot happier. But outside of those pivot or backspacer screws, there's really not much to knock on this knife whatsoever. You have a really good lockup. CRKT, for the price, I think they do a pretty good job with their frame locks. They feel good. They don't ever you don't ever have that scenario where you put too much pressure on the lock bar and it's hard to deploy the knife. At least from my experience, I haven't had that happen a lot. They do a pretty good job designing them. So all in all, for $52, this is a really solid build. It's just really well done. So pretty pleasantly surprised to see that from CRKT. Going into the action now, this is where it gets really good. This is where it kind of doesn't feel like a CRKT. Now, I guess, CRKT does make knives with good action, but this one is extra smooth. This is a lot smoother than other CRKTs I've handled. And listen to it. It just comes right out. It has a very nice detent. There doesn't sound like there's any dirt or crud or anything in the bearings. It's very clean. This is a very clean knife out of the shop, which you don't have a lot from CRKT, which you don't have a lot from a lot of manufacturers. Vast majority of the knives I open up and clean, they're pretty dirty. Now this one, like I said, I haven't opened it yet, but I can tell just by the action of it and the sound of it, it's very smooth. Very, very smooth. Really impressed by that. And even on the close on this guy, it falls right shut. Now, it does have bearings in this. This guy is running on bearings, which is very nice to see. The original Pilar is running on the nylon washers, which is still pretty smooth, but this is, oh my God, this is night and day from the original Pilar. It is so easy. One of the best actions on a CRKT I've ever handled, in all honesty. Feels very, very good. I really wouldn't change anything about this action, especially kind of, taking into consideration, the history of CRKT and my experience with it in the past. This is definitely the smoothest CRKT I've ever had. So feels very, very good. Like this knife a whole lot. You guys know I don't love D2, but you know what? D2 is better than 8CR. So I'll take what I can get there. And it does have some pretty good edge retention. So there are some good qualities to D2, especially with the Voxness knife. You are going to be, it feels so good in your hand. You're a lot more inclined to carry it more and use it more. So, a hard working steel is always a nice pairing with a Voxness design. But all in all, overall thoughts on this are really, really good. Outside of the free spinning backspacer screws, there's really not a whole lot I have to gripe about with this knife, which makes me really happy. I would love to see CRKT get more into the premium market with, you know, a little better steels and, you know, a little more handle materials. They started to do it, but I think they are kind of like their identity, their brand is more on the budget side, which I get and I'm okay with, and I don't mind. You know, I think what they did here is actually a step up from a lot of other things they did. You know, they got the G10 and they got the nice stainless steel lock side and D2 steel. You know, they hit it with an accent of the brass backspacer. They did a lot of good things here. I hope they continue that. And I would love to see this model here, kind of like my OG Pilar with some micarta scales and, you know, maybe even like a S35 blade. Doesn't even have to be S35. I mean, like 14C28N would be great. You know, that would be awesome. I think that would work really well with a knife of this design too, because it's just a really good working steel as well, with a little better corrosion resistance. But nonetheless, even what we have here is very good. Very happy. Like what I'm seeing from CRKT. I hope they keep that partnership with Vox going. He is a great asset to their brand. Gives them some very good knives. So definitely keep that going, CRKT. Keep doing what you're doing. What do you guys think? What do you think of this Pilar 3? Do you like it as much as I do? Have you experienced one? Let me know. Looking forward to hear what you guys think about this. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And until the next one, I'm out.